Hello and welcome. Multinational companies are generally seen as being friendly to women, but how friendly can they be, particularly if the woman is India and we're talking about an Indian context? Let's get that unique perspective and also see if that translates into some ways in the way Indian companies deal with women employees or women counterparts or women colleagues. I'm joined by Urbi Mukherjee, who's technology program manager or tech program manager at Thomson Reuters. So Urbi, thank you very much for speaking with us. So Urbi, tell us, you've been in multinationals all through your life, right from the time you passed out from engineering. So you've already seen a sort of slice of life.
Few, yes.
Right. So why, what are the kind of things that you found interesting being here and working for a multinational company?
Firstly, every organization would have relatively the similar DNA. So it's interesting working no matter which organization you're in. It has its own DNA, its own culture, and that's just fine. So even though I've worked across 3 multinational organizations, 3 companies run by the Western world, it has been different in all. I think what ties them together is the way our teams operate differently. A team on a West Coast or East Coast would operate much differently than how the team operates in India, and I think it impacts women more.
Okay.
We come from a certain socioeconomic background, and I think wherever we come from, whoever we are, is something we carry into the workplace. So when we carry that into the workplace, it's quite interesting to see how we either change or adapt to the dynamics existing at the workplace. And yes, teams, if I have a peer in US, how she reacts with her team, how she's perceived out there, is much differently how I'm perceived out here, and maybe how our performance is managed is also quite different.
Right. So when you say you take something to the workplace, is this the socio-cultural context that you belong to in India, or is it the subsequent education and all of that?
Both. It's a combination of both, right? So literacy is something, education is something else. So yes, I could be literate, I have quite a few degrees, but education is actually imbibing the changes within my environment and how I grow as an individual, right? So socioeconomic environment does make a difference, but after some time you develop your individuality and you move on. I was talking this morning, I was speaking at a panel discussion, that's where I gave this example. In India, when you get married, they tell you, be blessed like Sita, be blessed like Savitri. They don't say, be blessed like Draupadi. Right? So we're very comfortable with those role models that we have of Indian women, which are stronger, quieter, the silent types, because silence somehow in India dignifies sacrifice, rather denotes sacrifice and glorifies the concept of sacrifice. And Draupadi is this persona of a dramatic queen juggling 5 husbands, close male friend in Krishna, and she's seething of revenge. There's an entire war around her looking for revenge. So we talk about Draupadi, but we don't aspire to be Draupadi. Our parents also don't bless us to be like Draupadi, right? So that's the background which we generally come from when I talk about societal background, where most of us are told that the quieter, the silent person, the stronger, silent, strong person, let me put it that way, is the one which is likely to survive. But the workplace is very different. It is not the silent and the quieter ones. Don't get me wrong, when I say silent and quieter ones, I don't mean that you should not be introspective.
Sure.
You should definitely be introspective, but at the same time, you need to be articulate enough to put forth your point. And that is very much evident in Western organizations because their cultures are very different. They're very clear when they come across and they put forth their point. Biases, I feel, is slightly less for women in their part of the world, so they're not that conscious of how they're perceived. Of course, perception today is greater than reality, but that bearing is not on their mind at all times. For an Indian woman, coming from the background which I do, I think it had to be a change. I had to educate myself along the years based on my social environment and people I met and what work I was doing to actually try and adopt and not be the silent suffering type and probably be more articulate. But while I was doing it, I was very conscious of biases and how I'm being perceived.
So you mean that could be viewed as aggressive and so on?
Yeah, we always like to say it's more assertive than not aggressive, but when you go back home, you think, oh yeah, that's aggressive. You might not say it, but it's there at the back of your mind that yes, this is an aggressive stance. This is a pushy stance. Though when you say, you might say, oh, but that it's a bit too assertive.
And males, you feel, would typically get away with that as being standard or even being maybe something that's considered good.
I think if you introspect and then you're assertive, if you've thought it through and then you're assertive, I think it's the right thing to do, man or woman. I just feel that if a woman does it, maybe the assumption is it's just a frivolous stance and the person has not reflected enough. And like I said, it's probably because of the biases that we have within the society for the last many years, of course. So if you come from, when I say if you come, doesn't mean that I don't come. I equally come from that background. So for me also it was difficult to change and adapt and at the same time be conscious. What I'm trying to say is I'm more conscious of how I'm perceived than my Western counterpart. She can probably achieve a little bit more because those biases and the perception is not there in her mind. It is probably not topmost in my mind, it's somewhere at the back.
And that being conscious, you feel, affects the way you would lead your work
Yes, it
life.
does.
I mean, your work rather.
The choices that you make.
Give me an example.
I'll give you an example right now. For example, Thomson Reuters has a flagship product called Icon. I manage Icon product migrations. So there is a migration which is scheduled to go live this coming weekend, and we have a test issue right now. So while I'm talking, there is a test issue which is going back at work. Grace Hopper is a lovely event. It's an event for women in technology, and to promote women in technology, help us network and move ahead. But at the same time, I'm very conscious how I'm perceived is this person who's just gone out for a conference for 2 days, which they're not really sure what merit it might bring back to the workplace right now because I've just come out for a conference. So my need and my necessity to be in touch and be on top of things where with my team who's testing the issue, confirming it back to my counterparts in India as to how the test is developing, or confirming back to my counterparts in the Western region, telling them whether we can go live this weekend or not is actually predominant in my mind.
Whether or not they may view a problem or
exactly,
like that,
whether or not they are worried, because the Western world, they're like, yes, there's something which is going to go live, there is a process. Before you do a software release, there is a defined process, so they know, yes, someone is going through a defined process. But I'm so conscious myself that I should be perceived as monitoring and guiding that process because I'm spending 2 days at the conference. So at no point can you switch off completely, because it's very important that what am I doing at the conference for 2 whole days? Networking with people for 2 days when I have an issue at work. So I guess as an Indian woman, you would need to multitask more. If you have a family, let's say your child.
So that boils down to really additional pressure in some ways to deliver or to demonstrate or keep demonstrating more than your male counterparts, right?
Yes, it always is. Yes, it always is. I think someone in one of the panel discussions today was saying very nicely. They said in India, from a child, women are taught to be more perfect. When you're giving a cup of tea to someone and you spill the tea, your mother will say, you spilled the tea, it's not right. When you're cutting vegetables, and as Bengalis, we have every vegetable has a way of cutting the potato. You just don't dice the potato. Every vegetable needs to be cut in a certain manner, and even as girls, you're taught that. I was taught that. This is how you cut a vegetable. At every point, to do every little housework, there is a detail that is involved, and your parents influence you, or rather your mother tells you, if you don't do it in a certain way, there are repercussions around it. In the longer scheme of things, cutting vegetables is nothing. But it has, because I was brought up in that way, somewhere it's ingrained back at the back of my mind that I have to be perfect, that I have to be conscious how I'm perceived. This works at an additional pressure on my mind. At the same time, I know I should not be showing this pressure. Because if I'm showing this pressure, then it's like, oh, she's crumbling under the pressure. So it is something that I think Indian women need to contain within themselves, deal with it on a daily basis. Might be able to talk if they have an understanding spouse or an understanding family, but otherwise multitask continuously and deal with it. It is very subtle. I'm not saying we have a huge problem.
Right, yeah.
It's a very subtle thing which is gnawing away at you, which I honestly feel my Western counterpart may not have.
Right. So, I don't know if there's a solution that you can drop into this discussion, but how does society or how do organizations, which I suppose is easier, fix something like this, or at least move towards fixing it?
I think it's very person dependent. It's first you, and the panel discussion I mentioned, at some point you got to love yourself. It took me personally a long time to love myself. The way I look, the way I feel, the way I dress, the way my body shape is, everything. There's so many things that you're judged on as you're growing up. And it took me a long time to fall in love with myself. I had to train myself to fall in love with myself. So as long as you have the appreciation of yourself, of what you do, of your own intellect, of your own capabilities, I think it makes you a more secure person. These biases are there. You can't change society. And I was in my 20s, out of college, I was like, yes, I'm going to change the world. But after some time, you realize that it's actually more exciting to play with the rules that has been set in the game and then win. That is more exciting after some point of life, at some point in time. You really can't change everything. And I'm sorry to sound, how do you put it, maybe old-fashioned at this point when I say you can't change, but yes, in my 30s, I'm quite sure I can't change things. So it's very important to be self-aware and to be very secure in yourself, to ensure that not that these things don't matter you, but to the extent you allow them to matter to you.
Right. So let me ask you a last question. So for a young engineer, let's say when you passed out of college and you were debating what to do next, or maybe which job to take in your case, what would you advise them? I think some of what you've said already covers that. I mean, you know, being more self-confident and so on. But what else would you tell them?
I guess you got to make your own mistakes and burn your fingers, but when you burn your fingers once, don't make the mistake of burning it twice. We have to learn from our mistakes. We just can't keep on repeating the same mistakes. When you hear something that new and someone is doing better, even if a man is doing better, I heard someone ask me this question, you know, men are so comfortable in having a fight in the boardroom and go out in the evening for a drink. And for a woman, if you tell her she's not performing well, it's so personal. She goes back home sulking and she'll not look at the person the next day. It is true, for us it's very personal because again, the way we have been groomed, it is always a quest for perfection, and hence if someone tells me you're not good enough, I will feel upset. So if that's something which you find that a man is doing better, copy it shamelessly, adopt it. It just need not mean that only women do good things and men don't. There is yin and yang in both, and if someone is doing something better than you are, please imbibe and copy it. It's easier that way than burning your fingers every time.
Right. And would it, so I mean, I don't know if I can put a one-word question to you, but career or family?
Family, I earn for my family.
At a young age particularly.
Anytime family, I earn for my family. I earn so I can dress and be in a certain manner. I earn for social esteem within my immediate environment. I earn because I should be able to give a kind of a house, kind of luxuries, how do you put it, commodities to my family. And I'm not being materialistic. It is how it is, because when you are able to provide for others, there is a sense of accomplishment within you.
Yeah.
And family any day comes first. But the choices that you make should not be at the cost of either work or family. You have to make those intelligent choices.
Right. So go for a career so that you can really do things for your family and be seen to be doing things for your family. Yeah.
And that is very important, because at the end of the day, my family is my backbone. They're so supportive. But they were not always supportive. You have to also work with your family to see that they realize what is important for you and are supportive. So it's a balance, but any day family first. Yes.
Urbi Mukherjee, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thanks a lot.